My name is Nora Caldwell. At least, that's what the ID badge clipped to my bag said that morning, the same badge I was half tempted to rip off and throw into traffic before the day was over. And before this story turns into love, chaos, and extremely poor life decisions, you should know one thing about me. I was never supposed to matter to a man like Richard Blackwood. Not in the corporate food chain, not in the city, and definitely not in the kind of way that rewrites your future. I was just a project coordination analyst at Apex Stratagem Group. Mid-level, overworked, invisible enough to survive, visible enough to get blamed. And the day I ruined Richard Blackwood's life, it started with spinned coffee. I was late. Not fashionably late, disaster late. I rounded the corner outside the executive elevators carrying a cup of coffee I absolutely should not have trusted and slammed directly into a very solid, very expensive-looking human wall. The coffee launched. Midair, slow motion, straight onto a tailored charcoal suit. Time stopped. So did my soul. I looked up, and there he was. Richard Blackwood, operations director. Tall, broad shoulders, sharp jawline, dark hair neatly styled, blue eyes that looked like they'd never tolerated disorder a day in their life. The man whose presence alone could silence an entire floor. I'm so sorry, I blurted. I swear I'm not usually this clumsy. That's a lie, I am, but... He looked down at his ruined suit, then back at me. Cold, controlled, assessing. "It's fine," he said. It was absolutely not fine. Everyone knew Richard Blackwood. He was the reason deadlines were met and excuses died young. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He simply remembered. I watched as his assistant rushed over, mortified, apologizing on my behalf like I was a liability they hadn't budgeted for. "I'll replace the suit," I said desperately. Richard studied me again. "You're late for something," he said. "Yes," I replied. "My career." And to my shock, he smiled. Barely. "Get to your meeting," he said. "Accidents happen." I stood there, stunned, as he walked past me. Just before the elevator doors closed, he added, "Try not to ruin anyone else's day." Too late. By lunchtime, everyone knew. By afternoon, I was no longer just Nora from admin. I was the girl who assaulted the operations director with caffeine. People whispered. People stared. Someone asked for details like it was a true crime podcast. I hid at my desk, praying for invisibility. I didn't know then that this was the beginning. I only knew my heart was racing, and I had just met the man who would eventually cost me everything. 3 days later, I was summoned. Richard Blackwood wanted to see me. Not HR, not my manager. Him. My coworkers avoided eye contact as I walked toward his office like I was headed for execution. I reminded myself. I tracked project timelines, compiled reports. I didn't flirt my way into anything. Still, fear doesn't care about logic. He didn't mention the coffee. Instead, he asked about my work. Specific questions. Smart ones. "You reorganized the Denton account schedule," he said. "It saved us 2 weeks." I blinked. "You noticed?" "I notice competence," he replied. No one had ever said that to me so calmly, so sincerely. Elvis Scott noticed too. Senior Business Development Lead. Smile too polished. Interest too sudden. He leaned against my desk later that day and said, "So, you're the girl who spilled coffee on Blackwood." I forced a laugh. "Congratulations," he added. "You're interesting now." That word again, interesting. I didn't know it then, but Elvis Scott would become the most dangerous man in my life. Not because he loved power, but because he hated losing it. A week later, I was reassigned. Direct collaboration, daily meetings, just me and Richard Blackwood. I panicked. I over-prepared, over-explained, over-apologized. Richard listened, really listened. For the first time in my career, I felt seen. Late meetings turned into conversations. Conversations turned into laughter. One night, I joked that if the meeting lasted any longer, I'd charge rent. He said he'd expense it. I laughed too loudly. He smiled, a real one, and suddenly work didn't feel like survival anymore. The elevator stalled between floors. My chest tightened. Richard noticed instantly. He talked to me about failure, about loneliness, about being watched instead of known. I listened, and when the doors opened, I realized something terrifying. I trusted him. Later that night, I caught my reflection in the mirror, smiling, and I whispered out loud, "Oh no. Comfort is dangerous because people notice when you start to glow." Elvis noticed. Elvis complimented my confidence, my proximity, my ambition. It felt flattering, until it didn't. Elvis started inviting himself into my space. Lunches, meetings, career advice. "You should align yourself strategically," he said one afternoon. "People rise faster with protection." I declined politely. He smiled like he didn't hear me. In the office kitchen, Elvis cornered me. "So," he said, "dinner tonight?" My brain panicked, and before logic arrived, the lie escaped. "I already have plans," I said. "With Richard." Silence. Heavy, because Richard Blackwood was standing behind me. Richard looked at me, then Elvis, then back at me. 7 o'clock, Richard said calmly. "Don't be late." I had lied my way into a date with the one man I should never have involved. I spent the entire day panicking. What do you wear to a fake date with a man who looks like lawsuits in human form? Apparently, the answer was too much eyeliner and regret. Dinner was a disaster. I knocked over water, laughed at the wrong moments, called the waiter Dad. At one point, I choked on pasta. Richard didn't laugh. He just slid a napkin toward me and said softly, "Breathe, Nora." And for some reason, that worked. By the end of the night, the waiter smiled and said, "You two make a beautiful couple." Richard didn't correct him. Neither did I. That was my second mistake. Outside the restaurant, I finally apologized. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." Richard stopped walking. He turned to face me fully. "You didn't drag me," he said. "You jumped. I followed." My heart did something stupid in my chest. I laughed nervously. "Well, thank you for saving me." He looked at me for a long moment, then smiled. A real one, and that smile ruined me. That night, as I lay in bed replaying every second, my phone buzzed. A message from Richard. "Next time, we do it properly." I stared at the screen because I knew exactly what that meant, and I was terrified I wanted it. I wish I could say things got clearer after that text from Richard. They didn't. They got messier, because when emotions don't know where to go, they usually choose chaos. And chaos, apparently, had a name. Elvis Scott. The next morning, the office felt different. People smiled at me too much, or not at all. Whispers followed me down the hallway like loose threads. I pretended not to notice. I was very good at pretending. But when I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, I found a sticky note slapped right in the middle of my keyboard. "So, you and Richard?" Lila from accounting. I stared at it. I hadn't told anyone, which meant someone else had. I crumpled the note and shoved it into my drawer just as Richard walked past my desk. He didn't stop, but he slowed, just enough to say quietly, "Morning, Nora." 2 words, and my entire nervous system collapsed.
Elvis caught me by the copy machine later, because of course he did. He leaned casually against it, like he owned the building, and maybe one day he thought he would. "So," he said, pressing the copy button like he wasn't watching my every move, "you and Richard Blackwood." I forced a laugh. "There's nothing to talk about." "Oh, there's always something to talk about," Elvis replied, "especially when a junior staff member suddenly becomes interesting." That word again, interesting. "I don't know what you think you heard," I said carefully. He smiled. "I heard you went to dinner together." My stomach dropped. "And I heard," he continued, "that you're very ambitious." I turned to face him. "I work hard," I said. "That's not a crime." "No," he agreed smoothly, "but sleeping your way up the corporate ladder usually is." The words slapped harder than I expected. I felt heat rush to my face. "You're out of line," I said. Elvis leaned closer. "Careful, Nora," he whispered. "People like Richard don't fall. They land on people." I walked away, shaking, but the damage was done.
Richard stopped me outside the conference room that afternoon. Not formally, not loudly, just him. "Nora," he said, "can we talk?" I nodded, even though my chest was tight. Inside the room, the door closed softly behind us. "I heard a rumor," he said carefully, "and I need to know if it's affecting you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell him everything. Instead, I said, "I can handle office gossip." His jaw tightened. "That's not what I asked." Silence filled the space between us. Finally, he spoke again. "I don't want you hurt because of me." The irony almost broke me. "I'm fine," I said, which was a lie. He studied my face like he was looking for cracks. "I meant what I texted," he said quietly, "and I don't say things I don't mean." Then he stepped back, professional again, controlled again. And just like that, the moment was gone. The fake dating lie came back to haunt us. Hard. Suddenly, we were being invited to things. Office drinks, work dinners, networking events. Together. It became easier to play along than explain. So we did. We bickered like an old couple at a company retreat. He teased me for talking too much. I teased him for being allergic to fun. At one point, during a team dinner, he leaned over and whispered, "If you steal one more bread roll, I'm ordering dessert just to spite you." I whispered back, "You wouldn't dare." He did. I laughed so hard, I snorted. The table went quiet. Richard just smiled and said, "She does that when she's happy." That word again. Happy. I wasn't ready for how much I liked hearing it. One evening, after a late meeting, we walked out of the building together. The city was loud, alive. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. "Regret what?" "Following me into that lie." He stopped walking. I turned to face him. "I don't regret you," he said. The air shifted. "I regret not being braver sooner." My heart thudded painfully. I stepped closer. He did too. We were inches apart. I could smell his cologne, feel the heat of him. Then, applause. Slow, mocking. Elvis stood across the street. "Well," he said loudly, "this is enlightening." The moment shattered like glass. The next day, everything exploded. Emails circulated, anonymous tips, concerns about professional boundaries. By noon, HR called me in. I sat in a cold room while they asked questions I didn't know how to answer. "Were you romantically involved with Mr. Blackwood?" "No." "Did you attend private dinners together?" "Yes." "Did you feel pressured?" "No." "Did you benefit professionally?" I laughed, actually laughed, because the answer was no, and that hurt the most. Richard didn't look at me after that. Not because he didn't care, because he cared too much. He became formal, distant, protective in the worst way. I understood, but understanding didn't make it hurt less. By the end of the week, the whispers were louder, and I knew this was going to end badly. That night, I typed my resignation letter. I didn't send it, yet, but as I stared at the screen, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Loving him was never the mistake. Staying might be. I used to think betrayal came loudly. Shouting, finger-pointing, doors slamming. I was wrong. Real betrayal is quiet. It sounds like silence where warmth used to be. Richard stopped standing close to me. Not obviously, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I noticed. He stopped leaning in when we talked, stopped lowering his voice, stopped lingering. When our hands brushed, he pulled away like the contact burned, and I understood why. He was protecting me, but it felt like punishment. The cruelest thing about caring for someone is realizing they can hurt you without ever meaning to. We were seated next to each other at another work dinner. Another forced smile, another lie. I tried to bring back the humor. I whispered, "If you order dessert again, I'm stealing your spoon." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You should probably keep some distance tonight," he murmured. That sentence hurt more than the rumors ever did. I laughed anyway, because that's what I did when things fell apart. It happened late. The office was quiet. Lights dimmed. Everyone gone. Except us. We stood near the window, the city glowing below like it was alive just for us. "I hate this," I said softly. "I know," Richard replied. "I hate pretending I don't care." His jaw tightened. "I hate pretending I don't want to touch you," he said. My breath caught. I stepped closer. "So stop pretending." For a moment, everything disappeared. His hand lifted, hovered near my face. I closed my eyes. This was it. This was the moment every almost love waits for. Then, the door opened. Laughter echoed. Footsteps. I pulled back instantly. Richard's hand dropped like it never existed. And that almost kiss became the most painful thing I'd ever felt. The next morning, I walked into chaos. People avoided my eyes. My inbox was full. HR request, meeting scheduled, urgent. I felt sick. Inside the room, I saw them. HR, legal, and Elvis, smiling. "This is a formality," he said calmly. "We received a complaint." I knew then. This wasn't rumor anymore. This was strategy. The questions came slowly, cold, clinical. "Did you engage in an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Blackwood?" "No." "Were you influenced professionally?" "No." "Did you feel pressured?" "No." "Then why did you attend dinners together?" "Because I liked him, because he made me laugh, because I trusted him." But I said none of that. I said, "It was a misunderstanding." Elvis leaned back. "Misunderstandings often benefit someone," he said. I looked at him then, really looked, and I realized he wasn't trying to destroy me. He was trying to provoke Richard. Richard was called in next. I wasn't allowed to stay. I waited outside. Minutes stretched into forever. When the door finally opened, Richard walked past me, didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't look. That silence crushed something inside me. Later, I found out what he said. Nothing. He denied misconduct. He protected the company. He protected me. And in doing so, he sacrificed us. That night, I sat alone in my apartment. The resignation letter stared back at me. I rewrote it 3 times, deleted it twice. Then I typed, "Effective immediately." My finger hovered over send. I whispered out loud, "I didn't deserve this." Then I hit send. I didn't tell Richard. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't, because if I did, I wouldn't leave. The next morning, I packed my desk quietly. No drama, no scene, just a box. As I walked toward the elevator, a voice stopped me. "Nora." "Richard." I turned. His face changed when he saw the box. "What is this?" he asked. I resigned. He stared at me like the ground shifted beneath him. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have tried to stop me," I said, "and you shouldn't have to choose." His voice broke. "I already did." That was when I cried. Not loudly, just enough. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, and that was it. The doors closed, and just before they did, Richard said the words that followed me for weeks. "I won't let this be the end." I didn't believe him. Not yet. I thought leaving would make things quieter. It didn't. It made everything louder. The city felt sharper without the routine of work to dull it. My apartment felt too still. My phone felt heavier every time it buzzed with a notification that wasn't him. I told myself this was freedom. But freedom, it turns out, can feel a lot like grief. The first week after I resigned, I slept too much. The second week, I didn't sleep at all. I replayed moments I shouldn't miss. The way Richard cleared his throat before speaking. How he pretended not to smile when I teased him. How safe I felt standing beside him. I laughed bitterly one night and said out loud, "Well done, Nora. You fell in love with a man who doesn't know how to fight for himself." The universe apparently took that as a challenge. I didn't wake up one morning and realize I was in love with Richard Blackwood. That would have been dramatic, and my life, unfortunately, prefers humiliation over drama. No, I realized it slowly, in fragments, in moments I couldn't undo. Like the morning he handed me a cup of coffee without asking. No sugar, extra cream. Exactly how I liked it. I remember staring at the cup like it had personally betrayed me, because you don't remember details about people you don't care about, and Richard Blackwood cared. It was raining the night he showed up. Not romantic rain, aggressive rain, the kind that soaks your shoes and ruins your mood. I opened my door and froze. Richard stood there, no suit, no authority, no armor. Just him. "Nora," he said, quietly, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he spoke louder. I crossed my arms. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," he replied. "I've been very good at doing what I should. It turns out I'm terrible at doing what matters." That line cracked something open inside me. "I chose the company," he said, his voice tight. "And it was the wrong choice." I swallowed. "You protected yourself," I said. "No," he corrected. "I protected a system that didn't deserve you." I didn't trust myself to speak. He stepped closer. "I don't want power over you," he continued. "I don't want distance. I don't want silence." He looked at me, really looked. "I want you, on equal ground. With no lies." My chest ached. "I left so you wouldn't have to choose," I said softly. "I chose anyway," he replied, "and I'm choosing again." I laughed through tears. "Do you have any idea how inconvenient your timing is?" He smiled. I suspected. And for the first time in weeks, I kissed him. Not rushed, not stolen, chosen. Dating Richard Blackwood was nothing like fake dating Richard Blackwood.
Fake Richard was smooth. Real Richard burned pasta. Real Richard Googled how to cook rice and still failed. Our first official date ended with takeout on the floor and him apologizing for the third time. I laughed until my stomach hurt. "You know," I told him, "I ruined your day once." He shrugged. "You improved my life." That was when I realized we were happy.
The email came 2 weeks later. HR investigation. Findings. Termination. Elvis Scott had been manipulating reports, harassing staff, using rumors to gain leverage. I felt no joy reading it, just relief. Richard called me that night. "I should have seen it sooner," he said. "You saw it when it mattered," I replied. Silence stretched between us, comfortable, safe. Happiness doesn't come without fear. Mine showed up quietly. I started pulling back, canceling plans, overthinking texts. One night, Richard finally said, "Are you afraid of me?" The question hit harder than accusation. "I'm afraid of losing myself," I admitted. He nodded. "Then don't lose yourself. Keep her. I'll walk beside her." No one had ever said that to me before. He didn't ask me to move in, didn't rush, didn't push, and somehow that made me want him more. One night, as we lay on the couch, he said casually, "So, hypothetically, if I asked you to ruin my life permanently," I laughed. "Hypothetically, I'd say yes." He didn't propose, not yet, but we both felt it. 3 months later, I got an email. A job offer. Same industry. Higher position. Different city. I stared at the screen and realized love wasn't the only thing asking me to choose. The email sat open on my laptop for 3 days. 3 days of staring at the same words, hoping they'd rearrange themselves into something easier. Senior project manager. Better pay, bigger responsibility, different city. It was everything I'd worked for, and everything that complicated us. I finally told Richard on a quiet Sunday morning. We were lying on the couch, half awake, legs tangled in that comfortable way that felt dangerously like permanence. "I got a job offer," I said. He didn't move, just nodded once. "Congratulations," he said calmly. That scared me more than anger would have. "It's not here," I added, still calm. "How far?" 4 hours by flight. He exhaled slowly. "That's far." "I haven't accepted," I rushed. I wanted to tell you first." He turned toward me then and smiled. Not forced, not broken, just honest. "I don't want to be the reason you don't grow," he said. I hated how much I loved him for that.
We tried to be mature. That was our first mistake. We made schedules, planned calls, promised honesty. The first few weeks were almost fun. Late-night video calls where he teased me about my terrible apartment lighting, me laughing when he showed me his failed attempts at cooking without supervision. Once, he burned toast so badly the smoke alarm went off mid-call. I laughed for 5 straight minutes. "I'm starting to think you need adult supervision," I said. "I had you," he replied. "You abandoned me." It was a joke. Mostly. Then came the missed calls, the delayed replies, the nights where one of us was too tired to be cheerful. I told myself it was normal. I told myself love didn't disappear just because distance stretched it. But distance has a way of amplifying doubt. One night, after my 3rd rescheduled call, I snapped. "Do you even miss me?" I asked. He went quiet. "I do," he said carefully, "but I'm trying not to make that your responsibility." That sentence landed wrong. I heard detachment where he meant respect. And just like that, we started speaking different emotional languages. We argued over the stupidest things, a forgotten text, a misunderstood tone, a joke that didn't land. Once, I said sarcastically, "Maybe this is easier for you because you're used to being alone." The moment the words left my mouth, I wanted them back. Richard stiffened. "That's unfair," he said quietly, and for the first time since we met, he didn't fight to fix it. We didn't break up in a dramatic explosion. We broke up in exhaustion, on a call that lasted too long and said too little. "I don't want to resent you," I said. "I don't want to cage you," he replied. Silence stretched. Then he said the words I wasn't ready for. "Maybe love isn't enough right now." I closed my eyes. "Maybe not," I whispered. And just like that, we let go. No yelling, no insults, just two people hurting quietly. I threw myself into work. Excel sheets replaced emotion. Meetings replaced memories. But grief has a way of sneaking up on you, in grocery aisles, in empty beds, in jokes you can't share with anyone else. One night, I laughed at something on TV and instinctively reached for my phone, then remembered and cried instead. 3 months later, my phone rang at midnight. Richard's name lit up the screen. My heart betrayed me instantly. "I'm sorry to call so late," he said, "but I needed to hear your voice." I sat on my bed. "You have it," I replied. He exhaled. "I tried to be logical," he said. "I tried to convince myself that timing mattered more than truth." I didn't interrupt. "I was wrong," he continued. "You're not a chapter, you're the story." Tears spilled before I could stop them. "I don't want a life that doesn't include you," he said, "no matter the distance." It rained the night he showed up, again. Some things, apparently, were tradition. I opened my door, and there he was, soaked, breathless. "I quit my job," he said. I stared at him. "You what?" "I found something else," he added quickly, "something closer, something flexible." I shook my head, laughing through tears. "You're insane." He smiled. "I'm in love." I didn't hesitate. I kissed him, hard, desperately, like I'd been holding my breath for months. Later, as we lay tangled together, he traced circles on my arm. "I'm not proposing," he said suddenly. I laughed. "Good, because that would be a lot right now. But," he added, "I am promising." I turned to him. "To keep choosing you," he said, "even when it's inconvenient." My chest ached in the best way. "I can work with that," I said. 2 weeks later, I found a small velvet box in his jacket pocket. I didn't open it, but I knew. And suddenly, forever felt very close. I never thought forever would feel so chaotic, and yet, as I stood in my apartment, staring at the velvet box Richard had left in plain sight, I realized that chaos was exactly the kind of forever I wanted. He didn't kneel. He didn't prepare a speech or hire a string quartet. Instead, he burned dinner. Yes, burned dinner. The smoke alarm screamed like a banshee. I ran into the kitchen, laughing so hard I nearly slipped on the wet floor. Richard was waving a spatula, face red from the smoke and embarrassment. He sputtered. I put my hands on his shoulders. "Stop apologizing and tell me why you're holding a box," I said, pointing at the velvet cube on the counter. He swallowed hard. "So, hypothetically, if I asked you to ruin my life permanently, would you?" I blinked, trying not to laugh through my tears. "Hypothetically, absolutely," I said. He grinned. "Good," he whispered, "because I want to spend the rest of my life with the woman who ruined my day and changed it forever." And then, in the most imperfect, beautiful moment imaginable, he asked me to marry him. I said yes, before he could even open the box. Our families met the next week. Richard's mother scrutinized my outfit. My father gave him a look that clearly said, "I will haunt you for life if you hurt her." Dinner was a war zone of expectations, opinions, and passive-aggressive compliments. At one point, someone spilled soup, someone else sneezed in unison, and Richard tripped over his own foot. I laughed until I cried. "You're lucky I love you," I whispered, squeezing his hand. He winked. Luck had nothing to do with it.
The week before the wedding was stressful. Vendors were late, dresses didn't fit, the groomsmen got lost. And me? I panicked every time I thought about standing in front of him, promising forever. Richard held my hands, looked into my eyes, and said, "You're my chaos, my peace, my everything. Just stand there and look beautiful. Everything else will work itself out." And somehow that calmed me. The wedding itself was a perfect disaster. I tripped on the first step of the aisle. The flower girl threw petals in the wrong direction. The officiant mispronounced both of our last names. Richard laughed through all of it. I laughed through all of it. When I finally reached him at the altar, soaked in sweat and emotion, he whispered, "You're perfect, even when you're imperfect." I whispered back, "And you're mine, even when you're ridiculous." We exchanged vows, rings, and tears, all perfectly chaotic and messy, and all completely ours. The kiss after we were pronounced husband and wife lasted longer than expected, long enough that the rain outside decided to join us, drenching us both. Long enough that I realized in a very real, very final way that I had ruined his day once, and he had given me a lifetime in return. Long enough to know that love, true love, is never tidy, never perfect, but always worth it. Weeks later, married life was a continuation of chaos. Richard burned breakfast. I accidentally glued the curtains to the wall while fixing them. We laughed a lot. We argued over silly things, made up in sillier ways, and somehow that made our love stronger. Because love, as I finally understood, wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy, comedic, heart-stopping, real. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. If you laughed, cried, or believed in unexpected love, subscribe for more long-form romance stories. And tell me in the comments, what's the most chaotic moment that turned your life around?